I evented some horses for Her Majesty the Queen, which was a fantastic thing to do. All of the horses were fed on a trumpet call, and all of a sudden you can hear cracking in the ice.
No. Hello guys, and welcome back. This is True Horses and I'm Valeria. Today we are in Wiltshire visiting Richard Waygood. Richard is a very interesting persona. He is actually Major Richard Waygood MBE. He was honored with this award by former Queen of England for his outstanding performances in the equestrian field. Apart from that, he's been the riding master of Queen's Cavalry for 7 years, prior to what he's been in the cavalry, working in the cavalry for 20 years. So he has a lot of experience to share with us, a lot of fun stories, working closely to the Queen, and at the moment he's team performance manager of British eventing team. He's been team performance manager of British Dressage team as well. During his leadership, both of the team got multiple gold medals in high prestigious competitions. And I can't wait for you guys to meet Richard. He is an amazing person, and let's go and see him. Hi Richard, thank you so much for having us today.
No, you're very welcome.
To start the conversation about your fascinating life and career, I think it's reasonable to ask you, how did it all start, and how did you find yourself connected to the horse world?
So, good question. The beginning, I was 16 when I left school, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I had a very good friend who always wanted to join the lifeguards in the Household Cavalry. So I went off to the recruiting office with him. And when I was at the recruiting office, I wanted to join the REME, which is the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. And that was to do something practical, some sort of engineering job. And there was no places. So then I put down that my father liked horses, you see. So I put down that I liked horses and dogs. And they read through and they said, actually, you've got here, you like horses. What about the lifeguards? So my friend, as I said, he knew all about the lifeguards, and I just sort of followed him along a little bit blindly, and I joined the lifeguards. And about 3 months later, I arrived at a place called the Guards Depot in Purbright, where we spent 1 year training, doing all of your military training. And then I went to Knightsbridge in Hyde Park, which I think you know. Yeah. And when I arrived at Knightsbridge, we had to do a 16-week riding course to teach you all of the basics. And then after your 16 weeks, you did a further 4 weeks in learning how to ride in all of the ceremonial uniform.
And so the main purpose of lifeguards, is it if the royal family is in danger, are you supposed somehow to guard it, or it's just the name lifeguards and it has nothing actually to do with that?
No, originally, that was part of the sort of role of the Household Cavalry, was to guard the sovereign. So many years ago. And so it was also has a ceremonial function, as you know, but even on the big state visits and the ceremonial parades, there's still a security aspect to the role of the Household Cavalry. But to give you an example, when the monarch in years of old would leave London, one half of the regiment would ride with the monarch all the way to halfway to Windsor. Yeah. Okay. And then the regiment in Windsor would ride up and meet, and they would swap over.
Wow.
So, and then they would escort them the rest of the way to Windsor. And that would happen often when you were moving all around the country.
beautiful.
We were encouraged to event, because eventing was initially a military sport.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so eventing, the idea of eventing when it first started was that you could ride precision in your dressage test, that then you could ride cross country. You understood covering the ground cross country and teaching your horses how to be brave and you being brave. But then on the last day, it was to prove that you had your horse fit enough and managed it well enough to come out and show jump on the last day. So it really was a military sport. So we were encouraged to event. And as I was progressing, I learned a bit more about eventing. And then my next sort of goal, I thought I want to ride around badminton.
Yeah.
And everybody thought I was bonkers, because in the military, to try to have your military career and the work that you had to do, and to try to achieve your sporting aspirations was really, really hard. But I'd have to say that as I became more successful, the Household Cavalry really supported me. So I had the goal I wanted to be, to ride around badminton. But then also, I then thought I want to be the riding master. And the riding master is a wonderful appointment. And the riding master is, it's an honour and a privilege to do the job, but you were in charge of all of the coaches, buying of the horses, training of the horses, training of the soldiers, training of the musical ride, and the choreography, and a lot of the choreography for the ceremonial parades.
Wow.
So it was a wonderful job on the frozen lake at St. Moritz.
How was that?
It was amazing. Yeah, I mean, it was quite a journey for the horses.
Yeah.
But we had to. I can remember riding onto the ice the first day, and we were walking across, and I was on my feet, and all the boys, we had sort of the whole musical ride come in, and the drum horse as well. And all of a sudden, you could hear cracking in the ice.
No.
And everyone was, whoa. And I went, ride, halt. And everyone halted. And they were looking at me, and I was looking at them. And I said, just stay there. And there was this old chap who was doing a little bit of work over to the side. And I walked over and I said, the ice is it? He said, no. He said, if the ice, you hear sharp cracking, it means the ice is healthy. It's when you don't hear that cracking, it means the ice is melting. So it was incredible. So we did this amazing performance. And interestingly enough, they churn the top of the ice up with a piece basher. And the studs don't need to be very big, because the top of the ice is all churned up. And the horses don't slip at all, really.
Okay.
So we put studs in the horses, but not particularly big studs. And the other thing we had to do was with the helmets, we had to put a little bit of Vaseline on the peak of the helmet here, and some just here where it touched the ears, because it was freezing. And it was, of course, burning the boy's skin or sticking to their skin. Wow. So we had to put some Vaseline underneath on the helmet. But it was quite incredible. And then I was very lucky, through a lot of coincidences. I rode a few horses for Her Majesty the Queen. Some of those horses, most of them were competition horses. There was one, really wonderful horse. It was quite well recognised because it was a skewbald, so it was a brown and white, and it was a lovely looking horse.
Is it that one?
Yes, there it is, just there. So there's Peter Pan.
Yeah, Peter Pan, his name?
Yeah, and a beautiful horse, and this horse is a really good jumper. And I taught to him how to jump a sword stuck in the ground. Oh, wow. So I think the idea, it's been done many hundreds of years ago. But when we were in India with the 61st Cavalry and the President's Bodyguard, we saw them jumping a sword stuck in the ground. I was very lucky. So I evented horses for Her Majesty the Queen, which was a fantastic thing to do. So this sort of ran parallel with my army career, my competition career. Wow. It was all bonkers.
How was it working with Her Majesty?
Absolutely amazing. She really loved watching the horses work and really understood the horses. Okay. And had as we know, a great affinity and passion when it came to horses. And I would often school the horses and give them a jump in front of Her Majesty, and And
Would she get on after sometimes?
that she always rode the Highland ponies, and you saw at the funeral Emma, which was 26 years old, Emma. So she rode very regularly right up until she went up to Balmoral.
Okay.
But the horses I was riding, they were competition horses, so they were sort of finely tuned. And I'm sure Her Majesty, sort of in her earlier years, definitely would have rode those horses. And to give you some context, everything was done on the trumpet call, whether it was on the battlefield. And the reason why it was done on the trumpet call, so you could hear it. So the trumpeter would ride a grey horse and would ride next door to the officer. And the officer would say, would give him an order, prepare to canter, and the trumpeter would blow the canter.
Oh, wow.
So everything happened. They would blow the trot. They'd blow left wheel, right wheel, halt. Back in the stables, or during the day, you had trumpet calls all day long. You had Rivali.
Weren't you tired of it at some point?
No, because it's funny. If I hear it now, it's the hairs stand up here. But I'll give you another example. All of the horses were fed on the trumpet call.
Wow.
So if
that's really army work.
Really army, but it made complete sense. If you had 100 horses and you start feeding them all at different times, you end up with them kicking, whinnying. Some always get fed first. Some. So what actually happened at whenever the feed away was, and it was normally at 12:20 and 4:20, the trumpeter would blow. And I'm going to embarrass myself now, but he would blow, and he would blow a tune that said, feed those horses, feed those horses, feed those horses away, feed those horses, feed those horses, feed them oats and hay. So it would go, feed those horses away. And on the last note, all the soldiers turned to the right, picked up the feeds and put them in for the horses.
Did the queen choose her horses herself?
That's a good question. I would have thought that Her Majesty would have vetted the horses and had the final sort of But I'm only guessing. But I think with the Household Cavalry horses, the commanding officer, the veterinary officer, and the riding master would go and pick the horses and buy them.
Mainly from England?
Mostly from Ireland.
Ireland.
They're mostly Irish draft, and they're lovely people. They have a sense of humour. But Her Majesty would know. My guess is that in front of Her Majesty would have been almost the finished article, and then she would give the final approval.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember once I was sat on my horse outside Horse Guards. And I had my sword in one hand. I was only a young trooper. Sword in one hand, reins in the other. I'm looking into the distance. And with that, I could see out of my peripheral vision just the top of this sort of lad's head. And just down in there. And I heard a voice say, "Don't worry, Tommy, he'll move in a minute." And I thought, no, I won't. And I looked into the distance and I never moved. And a few minutes later, the lady said again, "Don't worry, Tommy, he will move in a minute." And I thought, no, I won't, because I was being a really good soldier and looking into the distance. And you try looking into the distance just for a few minutes, just for 30 seconds, it's quite hard. And then eventually I gave in and I did look down. And this lad's mother, Tommy's mother, was never talking about me. She was talking about my horse. My horse was stood on the edge of his shoe, and the lad couldn't move. It was, "Don't worry, Tommy, it'll move in a minute." So eventually I just gave the horse a little touch like that. The horse leant over this way. He could pull his foot out, but it was stuck right on the edge of his shoe. Yeah.
Crazy. When I came initially to England from Europe, it was very new to me how there is a culture of not only sports, equestrian sports, as in, I don't know, dressage or hunting or jumping, but how it's embedded actually in the culture, as in just, people go for a ride on the weekend in Windsor, or they go, to watch a polo game when they're not really riding. And all of that was so fascinating to me, because actually I've been living to Holland, and there, people were either doing dressage competitions or show jumping competitions, or eventing. And when I came here, I opened a completely different kind of enjoyment with horses, which, had those hacks in the forest and, hunts and all of that. It really made me think about how rich is the equestrian culture here. And I think almost every third person probably in England would ever had something to do with horses and really enjoys, time spent with a horse.
It's a good observation around the sort of number of people that enjoy equestrianism in the UK, definitely. And whether that is hacking out or whether it's going to a polo match, racing for us, I mean, we have a big following in racing, both national hunt and flat racing.
Yeah.
And you've only got to go to Cheltenham, to Aintree or to Ascot once to see the sort of following that racing has. And then you flip side to eventing, badminton on cross country day, over 110,000 people visit in one day alone. And so there's a huge diversity. The polo, when you go to the sort of high goal matches, again, plenty of people. And a lot of those people have never ridden.
No, exactly,
but they follow the sport and get involved, whether it's laying a bet and losing money or whether it's just there for the passion of the journey.
It's so spectacular, and that's why they get really into it, and it becomes a passion, even for those who never ride.
Absolutely. 5-6 years ago now, I stepped into the eventing role, and again, it's been a bit of a fairy tale sort of journey with the eventers, and there is definitely breadth and width in eventing.
What do you attribute all this recent success to? Is there something specific, maybe a combination of, I don't know, riders or management and coaching teams? Is there like a formula?
I think it's a combination of everything. Horsepower is really, really important. So without owners, owners are the biggest sponsors of the sport for us. But without owners, we wouldn't have a sport.
Yeah.
So combination of horsepower. I believe we have plenty of talent in riders, plenty, and we have plenty of world class riders in this country. But it's supplying and having that chain of top level horses. So just enough talent to get the job done. But you must have super character to be able to deliver on the field of play when you're under extreme pressure. So I would pick character every time over the talent. But then every now and again, you get super talent and super character. So I'll give you an example of this. Vallegro had super talent and had super character, as does Charlotte Dujardin. So put the two together and you end up with a multi-championship athlete. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Ben Mayer, with the explosion. Super talent from both of them. Super character that can deliver on the field of play under pressure.
But this happens only once.
Well, with horses, it's really important, and this is where horse welfare comes in. If you manage, horses enjoy what they do because they wouldn't do it. Going around sort of a 5-star eventing track, if they and around the show jumping tracks, they enjoy what they're doing. But the key is if you really look after their welfare, both mentally and physically, you elongate their careers and they're a happier horse and happier athlete. And it's the same as riders as well. So you're then could end up with those multi-champions. Charlotte's sort of reign in dressage with Vallegro was quite long, and they chose, it was absolutely the right thing to do. They retired Vallegro at reasonably young age. It could have gone to 2 more championships. But that was absolutely the right thing to do with Vallegro. Perfect,
So, Richard, in 2009, you got awarded with the Major of British Empire Award. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was a wonderful moment. So it was an MBE, as you say, and I was presented that by Her Majesty the Queen. And basically, it was for services to equestrian within the military at that time. Hang on, let me see if I can give one of these horses there. Come on. Oh, there we go.
Oh, this one is more talkative.
I think this one was.
Here you go.
There we are. So that was it, really. So yeah, absolutely thrilled to bits, and yeah, it was a lovely award to receive.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so after that, you switched to working with, from Household Cavalry. You left, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you went on to working with British dressage and eventing teams.
Yeah, so I worked with the dressage team for 8 years
As a performance manager.
As performance manager. So it's a really interesting role, because in that role I wasn't a coach. I was actually in the role. Here we go. Let's give you one as well. Come on. There you go. So within that role, I was there was a lot of what you call leading from the back, because you had a lot of good people, really good people. They were experts, and a lot of really good coaches, but it was basically getting the best out of the group. And that's all I saw my role as being, really. You had the experts, you had the horses, you had all the technical skills, you had the character. It was just bringing that together and getting them to perform as a team, really.
So in 2017, correct me if I'm wrong, you got appointed to be the eventing manager, performance manager.
That's right. So just really between Rio Olympics and the end of the year. So I'd signed all the contracts before Christmas. So yeah. So in 2017, I was sort of fully in the role.
There were so many successful events for the dressage team while you were the performance manager.
I know, but everyone thought I was mad leaving. But my passion, and in the eventing role, although your performance manager, I do have a coaching role there as well, and I really enjoy the coaching. Okay. So that was a way of keeping me in line.
Talking about the late success of British dressage and eventing, all of that. What do you think? Where is the British main focus right now, and kind of what the future holds for British equestrianism?
We've obviously been a very successful nation over the years.
Yeah.
So, you can't take that away. The medal tallies are really high, but everything goes in a cycle. We tend to, dip in and dip out of that success. The main thing is to keep evolving and to keep up the momentum with that success. And which takes me back, dressage really, it was 2009 when they got the first team championship medal, and that was at Windsor. At Windsor, they had the European Championships at Windsor. And then the following year, Kentucky, Team Silver, and some individual medals around that. And then we stepped into London Games. In between was Rotterdam, where they won the Team Gold in Europeans at Rotterdam. And then into London, where Team Gold and individual gold. Absolutely incredible. And that the team was Richard Davison, Carl Hester, Charlotte Desjardins, and Laura Beckelsteimer at the time, now Laura Tomlinson. And that was just a wonderful thing to be a part of, and it was a huge privilege. And I was very lucky. I stepped into that role pretty much at the beginning of that success. And you say the stars aligned, but what's happened in dressage, they've managed to maintain that evolving and the momentum. And here they are going to World Championships only a little while back, and to come away with team medal, and Lottie Fry winning both the Grand Prix Special and the Grand Prix Freestyle. So we have a world champion current world champion in dressage, And obviously before Charlotte, who had held that sort of mantle before.
And as we just walked through your yard, can you tell us a little bit about the actual riding and training? What are your main principles, and what would you advise for not necessarily beginning riders, but riders that want to, accomplish some things? What would be your advices?
Good question. So first of all is, when you look at tennis players, they will have a coach with them every time they hit the ball. So go and get yourself real good quality coaching.
Yeah.
So that's and a good quality coach will be able to have levels of intellect around what they're trying to share with you, so that you understand exactly what you're trying to do. The scales of training are absolutely paramount, and it's not just learning the actual scales of training, it's actually
implementing them
exactly and understanding them and being able to talk about them. So scales of training are paramount, but this is absolutely critical. I talked earlier about instructors in the army. Although they're called riding instructors, they are actually coaches. What you're trying to do as a coach is you're trying to share knowledge and empower the athlete to be able to go away and do that themselves without you standing there. And the ultimate goal is that an athlete can go to a competition and perform on the field of play without thinking, I've got to do what the coach tells, I've got to ride for the coach. They've got to have a system that allows them to have that ownership and to feel confident that on the field of play, when they're galloping cross country for 11 and a half minutes, they haven't got the coach running along saying, pull the left rein, pull the right rein. They've got to feel like they can take ownership of that situation. And then they will be confident in making decisions when they have to in quick time.
So, as you mentioned before about making riders, feel on their own and being self-sufficient, I guess, without the coach in the arena, how do you do it as a coach?
I mean, you can't suddenly kick a sort of crutch away from a rider, but ultimately it takes a little bit of time. But this is the important bit. This is my philosophy around it, is that the athlete, the rider, and especially because we're not talking about necessarily young riders that are, the longevity of the career. And sometimes the average age of our team could be, between 35 and 40 years old. So just let me grab this gate.
Sure.
So the first thing is for the athlete is to be able to filter what the coach has imparted with them. And some of them use multi-coaches, so they filter and what they believe is relevant to them. So they're being true to themselves. They're being authentic about the bits that they absolutely believe in. So the athlete then has filtered that, but most importantly then is that you have a system. You get the basics right and you have a system. And then within that system, you have to be disciplined to stick to the system.
This is the hardest part.
Absolutely. But then if you are disciplined, then it becomes fun and the outcome starts to look after itself. So the outcome then, I think these horses are starting to get fed up with apples because I feed them apples every day. But the system itself then looks after the outcome. But when a rider is riding and being competitive and they starting to ride to avoid a mistake, let's say coming down to a fence and they're coming down and they're trying to avoid a problem, then you start riding in neutral. But when they come down and they're thinking, okay, that we will stick to the system, it stops them from riding in neutral. That's great. And ultimately trying to teach ownership.
That's very interesting because I find it's a very important point because when I was living back in Holland and I was getting a lot of coaching, I would sometimes go in the arena and find myself like, oh my God, and what am I supposed to do now?
Exactly.
I don't get any instruction. How do I, and then I started reducing the amount of coaching I was getting and to train and ride more on my own. And it really helped and improved me in the arena.
They're having a rest now. They're roughed off these, and they're having their sort of a rest for a few weeks, and then they come back into work.
Nice and happy.
Yeah, I think we ought to get out of here before we get
I agree.
before we get invaded.
Thank you very much, Richard, for today. It was really great to to get to know you, and I'm sure our viewers will be fascinated. It's a really a journey that you can learn a lot through it. I think for those people who will hear this, it's a lot of lessons to take and to think about.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.